because, I think it's such a powerful concept that we all live in our own mind-generated reality. And one of the things I think it can be powerful is if we really start realizing that our conflicts arise from the lack of recognition that our realities are separate, that then here would be a vehicle for reducing conflict in our lives is, if we just remember that my reality is very provisional, just to say it that way, that it's the way I'm perceiving reality, but it's most likely wrong. And I don't even know how it's wrong, but just to recognize that it's probably wrong, it's probably inaccurate in some way, and that no matter whether it's right or wrong, the other person is going to have at least a somewhat shaded variety of opinion about the same reality. They are, because of all the experiences and beliefs that make up their mind's filters, they are not going to be perceiving the situation in the same way I am. So my understanding of those elements is going to reduce the conflict because I won't immediately hear the way they're talking as wrong. I won't immediately say no, because I noticed that with Arthur. He'll say, you shouldn't, my instant reaction to him a lot is no. No, that's not right. I mean, how often do I say that?
It's a Groucho song. I'm against it.
Whatever
right. It is, I'm against it.
And, Arthur, because it's funny, I'm trying to think exactly how it comes out, but oftentimes he'll say, you're always saying I'm wrong. And I'll say, no, that's wrong. And it's like he's wrong to say that I always think he's wrong.
Katie's motto is, once I thought I was wrong, but I was mistaken. Once.
So it's like, well, maybe if I could just stop that initial response of, no, you're wrong.
My stepdad was like that. I'd ask for anything. His immediate response was no.
That's right.
He didn't want to be taken advantage of. He didn't want to be conned. Mm-hmm. And I'm a born con artist.
But, I thought this yesterday when I was calling about, to activate a credit card. It was a business card, so I actually had to speak to somebody. And usually I am so impatient with that. I'm like, God, I'm immediately angry. Like, what do you mean I can't just do this by punching in numbers? And terse with the person, if not downright cold and obnoxious. And for whatever reason, I was patient and hadn't, and because I was imagining her life and being, somebody who has to have this for their job. And your job is stuck in some tiny little cubicle in some vast call center, having to interact with annoyed people all day long. And she has her job to do, which is go through these, she's been prescribed, she's got to ask these questions. And, so by really putting myself in her shoes, imagining life from her perspective, imagining her reality, I had a very pleasant conversation with her and actually learned something from her and that might, benefit me. And it was all by really imagining her reality and not just saying my reality is the only one that counts. And
yeah, well, you opened tons of space just a few minutes ago with that getting it about that I really am, brace yourself, folks, that I'm actually highly neurotic. When things really do get to me, like Asian lady beetle invasions in the old house we lived in until we moved to Asheville, sudden loud noises, on and on and on. Woody Allen in his early films, I really relate to that a lot.
But wait a second, because I really wasn't seeing that as a neurosis. I was seeing it as an actual physical. Arthur's much more sensitive to smells than I am. You smell things that I don't smell. And so I was thinking that perhaps you hear things in a way that I don't hear, that your ear is more sensitive to certain sounds. And it was actually, it wasn't psychological, it was physical. I mean, let me tell you.
Well, let's look at that. Does that make it more forgivable if it's just physical?
No.
Is it easier to have compassion for if it's physical than...
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, but I just wanted to clarify that was really what I wasn't.
Yeah.
Because
but see, that doesn't matter. If it's psychological, I still would be hypersensitive. Maybe it's because I'm neurotic. That's what came up for me. And we're talking about my problems here. I mean, so
These are my problems.
I
Okay,
was,
actually,
you
and
know,
I can see the prejudice. Yes, there was
yeah.
a prejudice. Yeah.
Because why? Because if it's just in the mind, then why don't you just drop
something,
it?
that's
Do
right.
something about it. I've driven Katie crazy with my screwing around with my music. You know, I've got all these songs, a number of which should be maybe #1 singles, as arrogant as that sounds. I never work. I go weeks without touching a guitar. I'm old now and dried out. My voice is so brittle. Propane heat, central heat, and winter. But
Yeah.
it's year round. In the summer, it's air conditioning.
excuse.
Central air, that drives me out too. Oh, yeah. And when and that's who I am. I'm a loser. My reality is I'm a loser. I can't win. If I ever succeeded at anything, it would blow my basic way of going through the world as a cripple. Here's the crippled.
That's right. That's right.
I
So
wrote a
your
song
mind,
called Crippled for Life.
so the mind-generated reality is built through physical and psychological elements. So the
Chicken
the
or the
things
egg,
that-
what difference does
right,
it make?
What difference,
Point is
right,
it exists.
Right. Right.
Yep. And to see that inevitability, I mean, that's the key to compassion. Katie just had compassion for me when she got that about my aversion to loud noises. And instead of making me wrong for it, for being a screw-up. Of course I'm a screw-up. That's why you can't get any more screwed up than being insane, and that's why we're working on this book, and that's what our message is if we get that we're crazy, if you can really get that you're crazy, and our definition of crazy is confusing mind-generated reality with actual reality. And you know what? Nobody knows what actual reality is. Because you know what actual reality really is? It's the absolute truth. Nobody knows that. And you go through life as you must at the stage of evolution, or they'd really put you in the back ward, acting like you know who you are. Hi, my name's Arthur, I'm a big shot, or I wish I was a big shot, but I'm really a loser. You go through, and that's who I really am, I think. I go through life acting like that. That's why I'm crazy. When you look in the mirror, the basic litmus test for me is you look in the mirror, and if you really think you know what that is, you're crazy. Because the truth is you don't. And that's what makes us crazy, is acting like we know when we don't know. Humility, the fool on the hill. From the Analects of Confucius. Shall I tell you what? I'm going to paraphrase here. Shall I tell you what sanity is? When you know a thing, recognize that you know it. And when you do not know a thing, recognize that you do not know it. That is sanity. What he said was wisdom. But wisdom, sanity.
Right.
True wisdom, yeah. So we're all nuts. So you can't get any humbler than that. Humility is the golden key.
Yeah.
And we could have compassion in that if we're not defending our turf. I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. If I could stop doing that, maybe I could look over at you and see where you're at and have compassion for you. And like Leonard Cohen wrote those great lines, and if you call me brother now, forgive me if I ask, according to whose plan? For when all has come to dust, I will love you. I will kill you if I must. I will love you if I can. And may I never learn to scorn the body out of chaos born, the woman and the man. Have mercy on our uniforms. Man of peace, man of war. The peacock spreads his fan.
Well, when I think of that song, I think I would like to change the lyric slightly to, may I learn to stop scorn.
Amen, sister.
The body out of chaos borning. Because, I learned to scorn a long time ago.
Amen.
And
we're all born out of chaos, too. That's what occurred to me when I was reciting it.
Yeah. But
nobody's born. I don't care if this is Beaver Cleaver's house over here. She grew up in a house that I was southern white trash, not really white trash, but working poor. I'd have died to have lived in a house like Katie's,
sure,
a
that
big,
you'd have been happy.
nice, rich neighborhood. Daddy is a doctor. God.
Sure, I had all the ingredients for a successful life. And
It was always chaos underneath it, no matter what
That's
it
right.
looked like on the surface. Dad came home one day and said, "Sorry, it's not working out, kids. Goodbye."
yeah, and I was insecure. I can remember, insecurities real deep, before my parents divorced. Insecurities about particularly in social relationships. I was always shy. I had a lot of trouble forming friendships and feeling comfortable around other people and thinking that I was going to be accepted. I had a lot more trouble with that than like feeling successful at school. I mean, I was extremely successful at school, but in terms of the work, but it was the interpersonal stuff that really caused me huge problems. And I think probably most people can relate to that. I think most people are insecure.
You know what comes up for me is unfairness, the schoolyard dynamic, that whole social thing. That was hideous. That's
yeah,
far and away
it
the
was.
worst.
Yeah.
The horror in the halls. I used to hide at one point, I think it was my sophomore year, hide in empty classrooms during lunch just to stay away from them. That's where I met Pat Conroy. He had just been transferred to Beaufort High School, and he was stuck in an empty classroom too, or he was looking for a place to hide. That's the worst part of it. And maybe, once again, according to our theory, nobody knows who they are. So guess what you're doing when it was the elementary school? It's, I'm king of the mountain, My dress cost more money than your dress. I've got the latest comic books, whatever, the pecking order, and it was brutal. Just little savages, Lord of the Flies, battling each other. And by the time you get to high school, it's a little more refined. You didn't have fist fights anymore, hopefully. And by the time you get to college, it's even more refined, but it's still there. It's just you've learned to control your fight, flight, completely egocentric way of relating to other people. And the rich kids usually are on top of the pile because money buys a kind of insecure...
You know what I'm imagining is this story that we heard on TCM last night, this woman talking about a memory she had with Marilyn Monroe. And it was at a party, and whoever this woman, I'd never heard of.
Yeah, she's a big actress. I can't remember her name right off the top of my head, but she was talking with... let's say Clark Gable and Fred Astaire and someone else.
Right, and Marilyn, but the
they
whole
were
story
talking
revolved
about-
around, I don't know if we can go into the details, the whole story revolved around making Marilyn Monroe look ridiculous and elevating this woman.
Oh yeah, this one, they were talking about Whitman, and Marilyn Monroe had just come out and just stopped the whole crowd with, she slunk over this actress and to the party and said, to this little group, and said, "Oh, Whitman, I just love his chocolates." And Fred Astaire, who was a true gentleman, said, "We all do, Marilyn." And he was so understanding and so gentlemanly, but the whole cachet of this anecdote was, what a dumb blonde.
That's right.
And she elevated herself by putting Marilyn down.
Yeah, and I was like, what an ugly story. And ugly in the way it was told. Because the whole point of it was to elevate herself. And so that was just an illustration.
Talking about Whitman.
Walt Whitman, the poet. So the whole point of that was to illustrate that, yes, as adults, maybe it's more subtle, but that elevating of self goes on unabated. We just have different ways of doing it.